you guys, welcome back to my channel. Very exciting video today. We are going to be doing a first impressions on the new Natasha Denona Glam palette. It showed up on my doorstep today, and rather than tear right into it, I thought it would be fun to unbox this thing together and do kind of a first impressions on this palette. Take a look at it, do some swatches, and I also have pulled out all of the more cool toned palettes within my collection. And at the end of the video, we're gonna see if I have these shades in other places in my collection, and in turn, hopefully help you guys determine if this is a palette that is either worth the hype or worth the price tag, or maybe you already own some shades like this within your collection. You can skip over this one. We will find out together. I hope that you guys are excited about this one. A special welcome to those of you that are new visitors to my channel. I hope that you enjoy this one. Of course, if you do, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe before you leave. And now let's take my box and my little razor blade here and get busy. Okay, I don't need the razor blade. That was much easier than I thought it was going to be. Moment of truth. All right, here she is. Oh, that is so pretty. This actually reminds me a lot of her packaging on her Super Glow highlights, but not quite as mirrored. It's a little bit more kind of this like, almost like a pink, steely, taupey gray. It's really, really pretty. All right, and let's take a look inside. There she is. Ooh, these are very, very cool toned. I mean, I knew it was cool toned when I first saw it. That is the first thing I thought is, oh my goodness, a cool tone palette from Natasha Denona. And then I looked at all of the shimmery shades and thought, look at all those beautiful lid shades. And the third thought I had when I saw this palette on Treadmood was, that looks a little bit like the Sultry palette. So we will be testing that out at the end of this video. This is so pretty, you guys. I am so excited about this one. Now, I will say this, I don't know that I necessarily needed this palette in my life. I mean, as I mentioned, we do have some other palettes we're going to dig into that are a little bit more on the cool tone side. We'll see how those compare to this one. But the two biggest reasons that I ended up justifying the purchase of this palette is because I feel like this has the lid shades inside it that I felt like the bronze palette was lacking. And I also don't own nearly as many cool tone palettes within my collection as I do warm tone palettes. So I felt like this might round up my collection a little bit. And then my, of course, other reason was for science, for you guys, because I don't know if there are very many people on YouTube reviewing this thing. So I'm going to insert some swatches for you guys right here. It looks like there are 5 matte shades in this palette, and then there are 10 shimmer shades, which is a good thing for me. I love a bright inner corner, a bright inner lid. I love something very bright and reflective that's going to open up my eyes. I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about this a million times, but I'm very excited to give this thing a try. Now, I have not swatched this yet. I know that you guys have seen the swatches because I will film those at the end of the video and insert them, but I'm going to go ahead and swatch these kind of by finger so I can kind of determine which ones I want to maybe dip into today. So let's go ahead and swatch all of the matte shades first. Oh, I love Natasha Denona's mattes. They are so beautifully creamy and very, very pigmented. These are very, very cool toned. Even the ones that aren't quite as cool are very neutral. Nothing in here is warm. Maybe this gold down here in the bottom might be a little bit on the warm side, but even that doesn't look overly warm. Everything in here is quite cool. So those of you that are not fans of warm tones might be all over this palette or really love this palette. All right, so there are the matte shades swatched. Those look lovely. Oh, I love this kind of rosy grayish shade. That is so pretty. Oh, I'm so excited about these, you guys. So those were all the mattes. Now I'm going to go ahead and swatch the first 5 shimmers. So these 3 right here and then these 2 right here. Starting with that first shade, which is kind of almost a little bit purpley, it looks. It's like a pinky taupe. That's really, really pretty. Ooh, very unique. It's like a soft shell pink that has just the tiniest bit of purple in it. That's beautiful. This one right here, kind of a cool tone gray bronze. Got a classic rose gold right here. This is one of her kind of topper shades. I love these. They look so pretty on the lid. And then this one right here is that lighter kind of silvery cream color. That's so pretty. And then the last one is the deeper kind of silver. There we go right there. Very, very pretty. I don't know how well these swatches are showing up. They're very subtle, but the reflect in these is really, really beautiful. On to the last row of shimmers right here. This is the gold. Oh, that's pretty. Look at that. This is kind of a medium brown. It's a little bit more of a satin. Very beautiful. This one right here is a nice kind of classic champagne. This is like a deep kind of pewter color. And then the last one is this kind of warm golden champagne in the outer corner there. You guys can see those. So there they are. Very impressive, very pretty. So I'm going to zoom you guys in, and I think I'm just going to kind of wing it. I'm not exactly sure which shades I want to go with, but we're just gonna play. Real quickly, before I dip into the shadows, one thing that I know a few people have commented on is the fact that these shadows don't really have names. They have locations. You know, like the old, was it CoverGirl or Maybelline or even Wet n Wild small eyeshadow palettes that would have printed on the shadows where you were supposed to put it. That's kind of what they ended up doing here. So each of the shadows are named by the location on the eye where they're supposed to be placed, I guess. Now, I don't really love that because number one, it makes it a little bit difficult to talk about the shades when some of them have the same name, but also I don't really believe in rules when it comes to colors and makeup, and I think you can put whatever type of shade wherever you'd like to put it. But I get the idea. It definitely does simplify it for those that maybe don't want to think about where to put things. But for this look, we're just going to kind of point to the shades that I'll be using. So I'm going to start off with this shade right here, which is called Blend, and we're going to just start running that up through the socket and brow bone, just really kind of to get that base color down. That's a really pretty, neutral, soft color. This is probably the warmest shade in this palette from the swatches that I did. This one does have, I wouldn't call it a warm shade, I'd call it the most neutral rather than just truly cool tone. I would imagine if you have a deeper skin tone, I don't know how well these transition shades are going to show up on deep skin tones or even very, very tan skin tones. That's something to definitely be kind of aware of, at least with these lighter kind of matte shades. And I'm using my Refer number 16 brush for this. Now I'm going to take my Wayne Goss number 18 brush. I'm going to dip into this light kind of gray shade right here, which is just called a crease shade, and we're going to just lightly run that right through this socket to deepen up my actual socket line just a little bit. This is a really good, cool tone crease color. It's like the color of an actual shadow. It's reminding me a lot of a shade in the Soft and Sultry palette. Not even sure exactly what shade that is, but just this like feel is reminding me of the Soft and Sultry palette, which by the way has I think been discontinued, but a lot of people do own that palette. I know a lot of you guys probably own the Soft and Sultry palette, so that is one that we will be comparing to. So I really want to use this kind of taupey shell pink right here. This is center eyelid underneath it, but I'm going to kind of use it all over my lid. Just with my finger, I'm going to pack this mostly on the center of my lid, but a little bit to either side of the center, and then we'll kind of blend something else into that. It's really pretty. This is not a super reflective shade, but if you have more mature eyelids, this is the type of texture that I think would work really good for those that have a little bit more texture or lines on their lids, because it's not overly metallic or reflective, but it does have a really nice shine to it that's not too metallic. Because I do like a good metallic, I'm going to also go in with this inner corner shade, and we're going to pop that where it says on the inner corner. This is a beautiful, beautiful color. Okay, then I'm going to take my Refer number 3 brush, and with that same inner corner shade, actually let's go with this more silvery inner corner shade right here. And I'm going to take that and just pop it right onto my actual inner corner and slightly below. Kind of on the lower part of my inner corner. I want to brighten this front part up of my lower lash line. That's pretty. That's like a silver that doesn't have too much silver in it. I can't explain it. It's like a neutral silver. It's really pretty. This actually looks really pretty for like every day. This would be a really good look just right here. I do want to add a little bit of depth to the lower lash. I'm going to take that first blend shade that we used, and on my Refer number 2 brush, I'm just going to run this along the outer half of my lower lash line and kind of tie it up to where those colors we put in the outer corner. My eyes have been so sensitive the last couple days and just watering like crazy, even when I'm not wearing makeup. I just think it's fall allergies for me right now. It's been kind of a nightmare actually for makeup longevity. When your eyes are watering before you even start, you know, it might be a rough makeup day, but hopefully they'll cooperate for today. Okay, very pretty so far. I do want to add a little bit of depth to the outer corner, so we're going to take that same brush, the Refer number 3 brush. I'm going to start off with this deeper brown shade right here. We might add a little bit of the lash line shade, that dark kind of charcoaly brown, the cooler tone brown, right up against the lashes when we're done. But I'm just going to take this, I'm going to start along this outer lash line in kind of an angled shape, and then I'm just gonna lightly tap that in and kind of just pull it in right on this outer V right here. Oh, I can feel my eyes starting to water. I don't know what is going on with me. And I'm sorry, you guys, it's 7 o'clock in the evening. Toilet flushing galore happening right now because everybody is home and inside. So if there is background noise, it is what it is. Love how that's going on. All right. Now, let's see, how deep do we want to go? Let's go ahead and just add a little bit of the darker color right here, the lash line shade, this kind of charcoaly. I'm just taking it on the very tip of that same brush. And we're kind of going to go in the same spot, but I'm just not going to spread it out quite as much. Are they bouncing a basketball upstairs? Come on, kids. I'm just going to really kind of press that in to my actual lashes. Kind of placing my brush right here at the start of the end of my lower lash line. That made a lot of sense. Hopefully you can see where I'm putting it, but I'm just holding it right at the end of that lower lash line and kind of pulling it up to give me that kind of wing shape. Okay, very pretty. So I do want to take just a little bit more of this inner, where is it? Inner lid shade right here, inner corner shade, the one we put on my inner corner, and I'm going to actually tap that kind of on the inner third of the lid. I just want a little bit more sparkle right there. Ooh, that's pretty. This is a very pretty kind of bridal palette. Like, these colors just scream like bridal look to me. That I think is perfect. I am now going to just add a little bit of mascara. I'm just going to take a couple of coats of my Thrive Cosmetics mascara, and then I will zoom you guys out, share with you a couple more thoughts, and then we'll get into some comparisons. Alright guys, here is the finished eye look. Very, very happy with it. It is very, very pretty. So far, just from what I've swatched and played with, I definitely say this is a palette that is more suited for those of you that are into more soft, neutral, natural, or even more feminine kind of looking eye looks. There is a lot of shine and sparkle in here, so if you're not into shimmers, then you probably already know that this is not the palette for you. I would say on the spectrum from warm to cool tone, this one definitely leans more on the cool tone side. There are a couple of neutrals in here, but nothing in here is warm, which will be good news for those of you that do not like warm tones at all. So far, I'm impressed. This is a beautiful eye look. I'm certain that I could probably get an eye look like this with other things that I already have. Now, I haven't played with the whole palette yet, so I definitely don't want to say definitively whether I love or dislike this palette right now. I definitely liked what I came up with so far. I'm excited to keep playing with it. Try some of these other beautiful shimmers. I'll definitely keep you guys updated. When I initially purchased this palette, I thought I might try and do a 7 looks video with this palette, but after getting it a little bit late, it took me a very long time to get my palette. And after swatching it, I don't know that I'm going to get a whole lot of variety in looks with this palette. Like, I don't know that this is a good candidate for a 7 looks video. If you absolutely want to see that, let me know down below, but I do have other 7 looks videos I still would like to film as soon as my eyes will start cooperating and my allergies go away. I still want to do them with the Artemis palette, which is a dupe for the Metropolis palette, but if you are dying to see 7 looks with this one, definitely let me know down below. So let's jump into a couple palettes that I own and just see what kind of comparisons we can find. I want to start off with the Soft and Sultry palette by Milani. Let's just have a look at these two kind of side by side. I don't know how many dupes we're going to find in here, but I definitely see similar vibes between these two palettes. But let's just swatch a couple shades here. So I'm going to take this center shade right here, and I want to swatch that next to this corner. Kind of, it's like a creamy gray. There they are right there. Those are quite similar, actually. Not exact, but very, very close. Now let's swatch this matte brown right here with this brown right here. Those might be a little bit more different. Okay, those are a little bit more different. I do also want to swatch the deeper brown, the Natasha palette. Let's have a look at that one. Okay, so not too similar right there. Let's go ahead and swatch this kind of charcoal in the Natasha palette. Again, this is a matte shade with the charcoal in the Milani palette. So there's the Natasha, there's the Milani. Look how pigmented that Milani one is. Man, this palette is so good. Now let's go ahead and swatch this center kind of pewter shade right here. Let's swatch that next to this shade right here. Definitely a different texture. Here is the Natasha one. This one is a little bit more creamy. It has quite a bit more kind of glitter inside it, but not chunky glitter, like really refined glitter. Wow, those look so similar though. Oh my gosh, I was not expecting those to look that similar. They look very, very similar. Now I want to try and find a dupe for this kind of glittery cream shade in the Milani palette. So I'm going to swatch the Milani one down here. I don't know that there's one that's exactly like this. Probably the closest would be maybe this one right here. Okay, those are pretty close. So not exact, but very similar. I mean, obviously you're getting a little bit more variety inside the Natasha palette, but certainly if you were just into that cooler tone look and you have the soft and sultry, you may not need it. I don't know. I'm not going to answer that for you, but definitely pretty close. Okay, next I want to pull out the Tartlet in Bloom palette and see if we can maybe find some matches in some of the cooler tones in this palette. So let's start off by going into this shade right here, which is the shade Rocker. And we're going to compare that one. Let's compare it to this shade down here. So here's the shade Rocker from the Tartlet in Bloom. And then here is the shade Outer Eyelid. Okay, not even close. Nice try, Mandy. Nice try. Let's try the silver right here. This one might be a little bit more similar. It definitely is more cool tone. This one has a little bit more kind of beige in it. But there, okay, yeah. This is like liquid silver. That is so pretty. Whoa, I kind of wish I would have used that today. I do want to try this shade Funny Girl right here. I love this shade so much. This is one of my favorite lid shades. And I think this one might be somewhat similar. This is the shade Center Eyelid. Okay, holy moly, those are exact. Literally, those are exactly the same. And then last, I just want to swatch this kind of charcoaly color right there with the charcoal in the Natasha palette. Okay, these look quite similar too. So here is the Tartlet. Here is the Natasha. Almost exact. There we go. So another good alternative right there. Next, I want to take a look at the Going Coconuts palette and see how that one looks next to this palette right here. Okay, I don't know. There might be a couple in here. Probably not many, but we might find a few. Starting off with the center shade, Cocoa Crush in the ColourPop palette. We'll swatch that one first. And then we're going to swatch that next to Inner Corner shade right here at the top. This, I think, is going to be quite similar. Very similar. Okay, another very close match. Those are very, very close. Then this bottom shimmery pewter color. Here's the ColourPop, and that one let's swatch next to this Outer Eyelid shade right here at the top. I'm holding it upside down, but hopefully you can kind of tell what I'm doing. Okay, so there they are right there. Not exact, but very, very close. And then last, let's do two more. So we're going to take the cooler tone transition shade inside the ColourPop palette. And let's swatch that one next to this shade right here. Not exact, they're close. This one is quite a bit deeper, a little bit more gray, but they're somewhat similar. And last, I want to swatch this shade right here, which is the shade Lovely Bunch. And we're going to swatch that one next to this shade right here. Those are very, very close as well. I know they're lighter shades, so they're hard to see on my arm, but they're very, very close. Let's do one more for good measure. Let's swatch the dark shade in the corner here. This one is a matte, and swatch that next to the dark brown in the Natasha. So here we have ColourPop. Here we have Natasha. Pretty close as well. Okay, so another good alternative here if you have the Going Coconuts palette. Again, not exact. Obviously, there are only 9 shades in this palette, 15 in the Natasha palette, but if you're looking for some similarities within your collection, there are definitely a few in there. Now let's have a look at the original Persona palette. Now this one I think is not gonna have, I don't know, there might be a few. I can kind of see maybe 4 or 5, so let's swatch a couple in here. Let's start off with this gold shade right here. I'm very curious to see how this gold compares to the one in the Natasha palette, and that's this one in the corner. So here is the Natasha one on top. Very, very shimmery, beautiful shade. And then here's the one in the Persona palette. Now this one is a lot more reflective, but I don't know if you guys can see this, but as I straighten out my hand and you see the wrinkles in my hand, you definitely can see the wrinkles more on this top shade because it's so much more reflective. Whereas the shimmer of the Persona formula is a little bit more smoothing. It's not quite as reflective, but it also doesn't emphasize texture as much as a shade like this does. But that said, you guys, they're both beautiful. But I mean, this Natasha shade, that metallic liquid gold, is gorgeous. Now I want to swatch this corner shade, the shade Seductive, one of my favorites in this palette. Okay, I'll put that one down here. I wanted to do Natasha first. So we're going to swatch that one. Let's go ahead and swatch it next to this shade right here. Okay, so yeah, that one is quite a bit deeper, but they have a similar kind of feel to them. And last I want to swatch this shade right here. Let's swatch it next to this crease shade right here. I know this one's going to be a little bit lighter, but I feel like their undertone will be more similar. So here's the Natasha shade. And here is the Persona matte. So as you can see, the Persona one is just a little bit darker. That's probably about it as far as I can see for the Persona palette, but there are a couple more similarities if you do happen to own the original Persona. Next palette I want to compare to is the BH Cosmetics Love in London palette. I feel like there might be quite a few similarities inside this palette, even though the blues in here might kind of throw you off. Other than that row right there, and maybe that gold, doesn't this kind of feel the same? This is a very underused palette in my collection. I do love it. I just don't pull for it very often. I know a lot of you absolutely love it, like it's one of your favorite palettes. So let's see if we can find some comparisons in here. I want to start off with this corner shade right here. Let's swatch that here at the top. And we're going to swatch that next to this shade right here, which is the shade Lolly. What do you know? Those are so close. Why do I not use that palette more than I do? Next I want to take this shade here, which is the shade Palace. And we're going to swatch that next to, I forgot we're doing Natasha first, right? This shade right here. So let's swatch the Natasha one on top. And then the shade Palace right here. Okay, those two are very similar as well. This one is a little bit more gold, whereas this one has a little bit more silver. But very, very close. Now let's take this corner Shimmer, which is the shade Cheeky. Did it again. We're going to swatch that one next to this shade right here. So here's the Natasha one first. Kind of a classic champagne. This one's a little bit more soft. I'm sorry, my hands are so stained. Okay, this one's way more reflective. There they are right there. Quite different. These ones aren't that similar actually. Now I want to take this shade right here and swatch it next to the shade Prestige, which is this kind of pewter shade right there. So here we have the shade from Natasha. Here we have this shade from BH Cosmetics. Oh wow, those two are very similar as well. Okay, last I want to take this dark brown right here, and we're going to swatch that one next to the shade Crumpet. Alright, so here is Natasha. Here is BH Cosmetics. BH one is a little bit cooler, but very, very similar. I actually also want to swatch it alongside this shade right here, which it looks so light when I hold it up in the pan in these lights, but swatched on the hand, it's a lot deeper than it actually appears in the pan, but definitely not as deep as the other one. But there we go right there. Very surprising. There are a lot of similarities there, not exact dupes, but definite similarities. Love in London palette by BH Cosmetics might be another good alternative. Last up, the Sultry palette. Let's start with this shade right here, the shade Pearl, which is the lightest shimmer in the Anastasia palette. And let's compare that one to the inner corner shade right here, which I believe is the lightest shade inside here, other than this more kind of silvery color. So here is the Natasha color on top, and here is the Anastasia color right beneath. Okay, so I don't know how well you'll be able to tell. This one is definitely lighter. It has more of a white base to it, whereas this one is more kind of a peachy pink. Definitely not exact dupes. This one is quite a bit brighter. I do want to swatch this shade right here, right below it, which is the lighter kind of creamy silver in the Natasha palette, because I wonder if this one will be more in line with that shade. Okay, it definitely is. It has a little bit more of like almost a green gray shift to it. It's very unique. On the eye, I'm not sure that you'll pick up that uniqueness, but it definitely is a little bit different than other light shimmery champagnes. All right, let's have a look at the silver. Let's go in with the shade Cyborg from the Anastasia palette, and let's swatch that one next to the shade, the darker gray center eyelid shade. It's getting very annoying, I know. So here is the Natasha shade right here, and here is Cyborg from Anastasia. Very different, actually. Not as similar as I thought they might be. I'm surprised, you guys. I'm not finding as many similarities as I thought I might. So I'm going to take this gold shade right here, which is the shade Steampunk. And we're going to swatch that next to the corner gold in the Natasha palette. So here is the Natasha gold, and here is the Anastasia gold. Okay, those two are quite similar. Hopefully you can pick that up. I know my arms are really stained. Probably one of the most similar shades I have found so far. I do want to see if we can dupe this dark kind of bronzy shimmer shade right here. I'm surprised I haven't found a dupe for this yet. It's a unique formula. It's not truly a shimmer, but it's also not a matte. It's just like, I wonder if it's one of her creamy shades. It's kind of a more satin formula. There it is right there. I just am not sure what's going to dupe that. We'll try the shade Teak. Although I know this one's going to be a lot more reflective. Maybe if I kind of blend it out. Okay, not too off. They're somewhat similar. Now let's do a couple of mattes. Let's start off with the shade Twig right here, one of my favorites in this palette. And we're going to swatch that one next to the crease shade right there. So here's the Natasha color and the shade Twig. Oh wow, those are almost identical. Now let's try the warmer brown right here. This is the shade Birch. I'm pretty sure this is going to be quite a bit warmer. Let's try it next to this shade right here, the shade Blend. So here we have the Natasha, and here is the Anastasia color right there. So it is a little bit warmer, but very, very close actually. So lastly, I want to swatch this shade Rose Quartz right here, and I want to see how that one compares to the inner corner shade in the center, and also how it compares to this kind of purpley taupe. So here are the two Natasha shades. We first have the one in the middle. That's the one that's a little bit lighter, and then the one in the corner that's a little bit more purpley. And then here is the Rose Quartz shade from ABH. So it is quite similar to that first one, just a little bit deeper. And that is about it for the similarities I can see inside the Sultry palette. I actually thought I might find more than that, but that is quite a few. I mean, they're not exact dupes, but I'd say they definitely have a similar vibe, a similar feel. I think the looks that you can get out of these two palettes could be very similar. So if you have the Sultry palette and you're wondering if this one is going to be too similar, well, hopefully this will help answer your questions. Alright you guys, and that is it for my video testing out the new Natasha Denona Glam palette. I'm very impressed with it so far. I think it's a beautiful color story. For those of you that like a more neutral eye, that like something a little bit softer, that leans a little bit more cool, I think it's a beautiful one. There are some beautiful reflective shades inside this palette. That said, going through my collection, I did find a lot of similarities in quite a few different palettes, some of which I was not expecting. So if you do own one or more of these palettes, maybe the Glam palette is not for you. But if you are someone that doesn't own a lot of cool tone palettes, maybe you've been wanting to add one to your collection, maybe you've been wanting to try out Natasha Denona's formula but not splurge for one of her larger, more expensive palettes, maybe $65 would be in the budget for you. I do think it's beautiful. I'm excited to keep playing with it. I will definitely keep you guys updated on my thoughts on this palette. I hope that this video was helpful for you guys. Hope that you guys enjoyed it. I would love to know down below, are you guys interested in this palette? Are you absolutely passing over it? Or maybe you spotted some other similarities within your collection? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you guys for stopping by today. I hope that you guys are doing well. Hope you have a good one, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. This little box showed up on my doorstep today, as in I bought it. I did not get this in PR. I bought this palette. Let's be clear. Mandy, I'm so clumsy. Too clumsy to do these videos. Okay. That totally reminds me of the scene in Jurassic Park, you know, the original Jurassic Park, where he like drops the water onto her wrist. And it's like, oh, it went the other way. It's science. Funny, Mandy, you're funny.